There we go. We are recording.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. Well, fantastic. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to come speak today. My name is Katie, and then, I'll just give you a little bit of information about myself. Like I was saying, I did graduate from Boise State back in 2020, right at the beginning of COVID, which was quite the adventure. But I graduated actually with a degree in political science, but my minor was in nonprofit management. So I did go initially into politics is what I started my work in right out of, oh, hello, we got you. I still can't hear you, but we can see you. But I did start working in politics before I started, I left that and I came back to IDFI. Back in high school, I was involved with IDFI. I was on the youth advisory board. I went to school at Boise High, and we actually weren't able to have an IDFI chapter at Boise High because there was a very strict no drug testing rule in the Boise School District. And one of the cornerstones of IDFI chapters has always been that students are willing to drug test themselves. So it's kind of a commitment to being drug-free. It's not, something that's imposed or, surprise random drug testing. It's students uphold their own standard of drug testing, and the Boise School District never does any drug testing. So I was never able to be in an IDFI chapter for that reason, but I was able to join the youth advisory board, which was really cool. So after, being involved with IDFI for many years, off and on in different capacities, I was able to join on as executive director back in December. And it has been the greatest experience. As a nonprofit, we face a lot of challenges during this COVID experience. I think a lot of nonprofits in Idaho are facing that. There's a lot of uncertainties, working with students and schools in a state where a lot of schools are in different situations. Just almost every part of Idaho is having schools do things differently right now, and a lot of our chapters and programs operate within schools. There's been a very interesting it's been very interesting trying to navigate that, but we are looking at just some really fantastic things coming up in the next year to help students across Idaho be drug-free, be happy, be healthy. And I'm really excited to get to tell you about some of those things, to answer any questions you might have about what youth prevention in Idaho looks like, what you can do to help youth be drug-free, any questions that you might have at all about the general topic. I'll give you some stats on what it's looking like. And then, what needs to be done to keep our youth safe and healthy in the state. So do you guys have any questions about me, or I'll give you a little bit of more information on IDFI's history in a little bit here. But before I go into everything, do you have any questions?
Yeah, we need to, you call it IDFI, but then this is Idaho Drug-Free Youth.
Oh, yes. So that's just, IDFI is the acronym. So IDFY goes really well into IDFI. So it's just a lot shorter than Idaho Drug-Free Youth. So it saves a lot of time. And it also, when it's really cool, it's like I defy using drugs. So it's kind of a little empowering acronym for kids to use, is how that we've kind of transitioned over the years. So we are Idaho Drug-Free Youth. But one way that we kind of skirt around some of the stigma, regardless of how much kids, how empowered some students might be to not use drugs, regardless of how, little they actually want to use drugs. When you're in high school and you're surrounded by a bunch of, other kids that are using drugs, it can still be a little embarrassing to sit there and proudly say, I'm not going to use drugs. It's high school. Kids are going to laugh at you, is the reality. No matter how, great that we can sit here as adults and say, it's good to not use drugs. The reality becomes saying, I'm a member of Idaho Drug-Free Youth. As somebody who was in high school not too long ago, I can confirm people laugh at you. So having IDFI as a non-drug-free, directly in the name acronym, kind of saves kids a little bit of that direct embarrassment as well. We found it's a good way to kind of skirt that social thing. It's a really weird, high schoolers are weird is kind of a good takeaway from this as well.
Yeah.
Heather, you're smiling.
Yeah. Yeah. Heather has one high schooler, two high schoolers. Sorry.
I'm very sorry, Heather. But yeah, it's a great way for me to save time when I'm sitting here talking, but B, a good way to kind of, make the social norm a little better for those kids in high school, where they can be proud and say that they're a part of this great organization, but it removes a little bit of the stigma from their high school social circles. So to a 2-in-1, good there.
Mhm.
Other questions?
I don't have any. And Vic and Connie, I think they can't. Does it come back through then, Vic? Oh, okay. They still can't ask questions because
I think he's saying he can't hear.
they can hear
Oh.
you. They can hear you, but they can't.
Okay, we're recording this.
Yeah, so we're
Okay.
all right.
They can type questions in the chat if they'd like, I think.
Oh, okay.
So if they have any questions, they can type them.
Okay, that's a
Perfect.
good idea.
All right, well, I will share with you guys a little bit that I have here so you can see some of the great stuff that we have. So this is just my youth prevention in Idaho, some great information on Idify, some of the stuff that we have. So what is Idify? These are some of our great kids. We have a really fantastic event every year up at Camp Luther Haven that I'm sure you guys are at least aware of on Lake Coeur d'Alene. It's called our Idaho Youth Summit. We attract typically 300 to 400 students up from across the state to our Idaho Youth Summit every year. It's this huge drug-free leadership kind of conference. It mixes summer camp activities with drug-free education, with leadership training. Really, really fun. I hear almost every year kids saying, it's changed my life. We have, students that come of their own volition from their own schools. We have students that are high risk youth that are sent by health districts. It's a really interesting combination of students. And so this is just a picture from that event. Absolutely fantastic event. If you guys are ever interested in coming and checking it out, we do usually have some adults who come and pop in from our local communities. You can just come and check out for a couple hours one day. Absolutely would love to send you that information. But yeah, so what is Idify, Idaho Drug-Free Youth? Our mission statement is empowering youth to lead happy and healthy lives. So rather than saying, we want kids to be drug-free, we want, all this stuff revolving around, those words drug-free, we really view the word healthy as existing around the words drug-free. So by talking to kids about how you can live a healthy life means a drug-free life inherently. Everyone knows that drugs aren't good for you, right? That going, and even us as adults, right? I know that going and having a beer isn't good for me. It's got calories, doesn't make me feel good the next day. I'm still going to have a beer, maybe at the end of the night. But at the end of the day, I don't hold any doubt that beer isn't healthy for me, right? But I'm over 21, I can drink it. But, we're sitting here and we know that cigarettes aren't healthy for us. Weed isn't healthy for us, right? We don't think that these things are explicitly good for us. So why are our students using them, right? So we want to approach our messaging with Idify rather than using these scare tactics that students have been taught with against drugs for so long. We would rather they approach their lives to be happy and to be healthy. And we found that this approach has worked for the 30 plus years that Idify has been in existence. It works so much better than us going up to kids and yelling at them in a classroom that they shouldn't do drugs and they shouldn't drink. It never works. If it did work, nobody would ever be drinking alcohol again, because that's what they've only ever done. And it would just, we would never see anyone ever abusing substances ever again. So we've really found that encouraging people to lead happy lives, find their passions, make positive relationships, exploring things that make them feel good in a way that's authentic and not abusing substances, right? And then leading healthy lives, rather than focusing just explicitly on don't do drugs, has been so much more effective than saying, substances are bad, don't use them. Which of course, there's always educational, evidence-based, here's why underage alcohol use is bad. Here's scans of your brain that show what drinking does to it. We bring in really effective speakers, and there's always content relating to substance abuse, but we like to talk to them like they're adults. We like to make sure that it's not scare tactics. We like it to be really frank content that we find to be more effective. And we've definitely found that approach to be a lot better. And just to speak a little better to youth. So for more than 30 years, I think this year is 32, IDFI has been a statewide substance prevention nonprofit. So we're traditionally headquartered in Coeur d'Alene. A lot of our outreach has been North Idaho. We also have a pretty strong presence in East Idaho, Wood River area. So Blaine County has had a lot of IDFI presence because their chapters at Wood River High School have just been expansive. So we kind of have these random areas around the state other than North Idaho that have had really, really fantastic IDFI, just IDFI outreach. Idaho Falls, there's he's actually now a state legislator, which is kind of fun. He's doing a lot to actually work on convincing our government that prevention shouldn't be viewed in just these black and white terms, that it should be viewed as, right now, I would say that the Idaho government likes to fund drug-free programs as, let's just put a bunch of money into rehabilitation. That I think funds a cycle of, you're going to have a bunch of people just going back into rehabilitation programs over and over and over again. Because if you're not putting any money into prevention, people will never know the information that they need to know to not have to go into rehabilitation programs in the first place. So he's doing a lot of really great work to hopefully convince our legislature and our governor that, we should be funding prevention programs as well as a state, not just rehabilitation programs. He's on our board of directors. He's a really fantastic guy, and he runs a bunch of prevention programming out of Idaho Falls. So IDFI has a decent presence in Idaho Falls as well. But yeah, so we have a really interesting statewide presence just with these little pop-up places that have their really strong presences, chapters in other places. Bruno, Idaho, another random place that we have a really strong chapter just because we have a fantastic advisor there. Just some places it really clicks with the population. So our values are empowerment, fun, knowledge, and support. Those are the things that really resonate with youth to make sure that our message gets through. And we know that when students feel accepted and connected, they develop healthy coping skills. And we use a primary prevention model to develop our programming. So that means that we don't provide rehabilitation services. We don't, if somebody is using substances, of course they're welcome at IDFI. Nobody is ever excluded from our programming. We can't give them the resources to recover from addiction. The only resources that we can adequately provide are to prevent people from using. We can't provide rehabilitation services. So, come on. What are our programs? What do we offer? So we offer some really cool programs. The one that I'm really excited about right now is this brand new one that we're developing called Youth Vision. This is a brand new, it's going to be launched with the new school year. This is what I was up in Coeur d'Alene working on actually. So you guys are one of the first people to hear about this. It is going to be an partially online, partially in person thing that students, so any student across the state can access it. And it will be basically an opportunity for students to be connected to information on prevention, on, mental health, on whatever. We're basically going to create, little content that students go in and they, watch a little video, or they, join a Zoom call like this. And then the rest of the month, they're empowered to participate with their community or with their chapter or with their school to do little projects. So we're working with Project Filter. They're a really great tobacco prevention organization. They're going to be creating some of the content for us. And one of the projects is they have a contract with the Idaho Public Broadcasting to create, you can create PSAs, like anti-vaping PSAs. So the students in IDAFI will be able to potentially create an anti-vaping PSA that could be played across the state of Idaho for 3 to 4 months, which would be really cool. So we'll basically just be creating projects for students to improve their communities, whether that's community service, whether that's stuff like making a PSA, work in their schools, developing a chapter, whatever that looks like. I'm very excited about Youth Vision. Hopefully it's going to teach our students a lot about empowerment, creating stuff in their communities, feeling like they have the tools to do something themselves, not just listening to what other people would like them to do, is really my goal. Chapters are one of our main programs. They are like little clubs within schools. So a lot of how students get involved is through our chapters. It's our main pipelines to students, is generally what I call them. So it's how, a lot of students feel that sense of community, is when they're in their school and there's that peer pressure. If they don't want to be using substances, or they don't like that, how they're feeling, they can go into a chapter. And there's that community of students that also doesn't want to be using substances or going to a party, and they've got a whole group of students right there in their school to hang out with. And there's always an advisor, so a teacher or a parent or an administrator who's a positive adult role model in their school present. So it's been a really successful model for us. Our chapters have been around for 30 plus years. The Idaho Youth Summit, I already talked a little bit about. It's that giant summer camp that we have every year. Really, really fantastic camp. We have our Youth Advisory Board, which is a group of 7 to 10 kids that helps us develop our programming, make sure that it's relevant for the youth in Idaho. They get to really work on their leadership skills. They get to learn really in-depth knowledge about prevention. And they just get to have, that really strong connection to our organization. That's what I was on. That got me into IDAFI back a little while ago. And it's a pretty cool opportunity. And then right now, these are on pause because, large groups aren't really meeting in the state of Idaho. But when you can have large groups of people together in one room, we do student assemblies. And so we send in a facilitator to a school, and he'll work with, either the entire school or a large group of students, and generally try to break down, those like click connections, and break down why, why are we using substances? Why do we have these walls up? What's going on? And try to get through to as many kids as possible this message of how to not be, relying on substances, how to, rely on positivity and empowerment. And it's a pretty fantastic model. Schools have been coming back to us time and time again because it really has worked for them. So our student assemblies are pretty fantastic. So that's an overview on IDAFI. Do any of you have any questions on who we are and what we do before I move into why prevention for young people in Idaho is really important right now?
Okay.
Awesome.
How old, what is the youngest age that your children participate in the chapters programs?
We have chapters in middle schools and high schools. So I would say probably the youngest age would be 11, depending on what age people enter the middle schools at. I think we've had one 10-year-old at the Idaho Youth Summit before. I think is the youngest we've ever had somebody participate in a program. And that was because they were the younger sibling of somebody who was there and their parent was a chaperone. So it was, you know, they were able to be chaperoned by their parent at all times. And it was easy for us to accommodate that. But generally, most of the students are 12 to 18. You can maybe get your rogue 11-year-old thrown in there if there's an 11-year-old at the middle school. But I would say mostly 12 to 18.
I have another question.
Yeah.
We, in our church, we do quite a lot of work with foster youth through the Idaho Department of Health and resources.
Mhm.
Are the caseworkers aware of the Idaho Youth Summit, and how much does it cost, and how long is the week of the program?
Yes. So we work actually also with the Idaho Department of Health. We work with their, it's called the Partnership for Success program, which is their grant program, because they fund a certain number of students from each health district every year to attend. So they generally work with the Office of Drug Prevention or Office of Drug Policy. And then I think they generally partner with the schools. So my guess is that within there, the schools are working with foster, if they do send foster students. Since this is my first year as executive director, I don't know too many of the exact details, and we haven't had an Idaho Youth Summit in, we won't have one this year, and we didn't have one last year. So to be perfectly honest, I don't know all of the details on how these students are chosen, but I do know that the health department sends higher risk students, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of the students were from the foster system. But I do believe that typically they work with schools, sometimes the correctional system, depending on if, you know, there's some kids that are on probation have been sent in the past. So I think that, you know, aside from that, students in the foster care system may also be a good fit. So my guess is that identifying them via schools with school principals and counselors would be how those students are chosen. And that would probably be how it's done more than with a the foster care workers. But I would think that they are probably at least in North Idaho, because of how prevalent we've been in the area. They're at least probably a little bit aware of us, if not super aware. Definitely a conversation I'm willing to have and sitting down with some foster workers, because I think that it would be a really great market for us, especially just with how important of a group that is to reach out to. It is only, I think it's $250 typically to send a student to Idaho Youth Summit, but with health department students, I believe it's $175, because they don't pay for food. Very complicated. Grants can't pay for food for students, which I've always found is very funny. They will pay for students to get on a big boat and party. We do a big boat party on Lake Coeur d'Alene as part of Idaho Youth Summit. It's like the end of the week, you know, thing. So they can pay for students to get on a boat and party with us, but they can't pay for them to eat. So I just think it's the most absurd thing. So typically we end up charging less, and we cover the extra cost because we're not monsters, and we'll just pay for the food of the kids.
Maybe they know that teenagers eat a lot of food.
That's probably it. Like, nope.
What's the upper age that attend this?
I would say anywhere from, just depending, because sometimes students are, I would usually say 18, but you do have students who are older and haven't graduated yet.
Okay,
So yeah.
After up until high school graduation is basically what the cutoff.
Mm-hmm. So we do have, we call them like youth leaders. So we'll have college students who come back and help work and do kind of like camp counselor type stuff with us as well, but they're not like attending the summit, they're kind of working the summit. So you do have people who are 19, 20, 21 there, but they're kind of working. But generally, 18, 19 is probably the oldest you'll see in attendance. Yeah.
Do you have workshops for youth directors in churches or other, it looks like that you're basically working with middle school and high school.
4-H too.
Yeah.
And how about 4-H and that type?
4-H, so like the 4-H program?
Yes.
Yeah, so students from the 4-H program are always welcome to come join our programs. We do a lot of, interconnected work with other programs. What is it? The business program. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
FBLA.
Yeah, they send a lot of students to our organization, not because they're on drugs. They just there happens to be a lot of crossover. They also have a lot from the HOSA, the Health Occupation Students of America. They end up sending a lot over. So 4-H students are always welcome. And we have done, if there's youth leaders from churches that were interested in learning how to do, drug-free facilitations or something like that, we have done facilitator trainings in the past. It's something that is just totally on pause right now because we're not leading facilitations, because in-person events are dead. But we have done advisor trainings for our chapter advisors. We've done facilitator trainings. We've done all sorts of stuff. And when we do the Idaho Youth Summit, we bring in about, anywhere from 15 to 25 we call them adult staff and youth staff. So young people from across the state, they have to be, 16 to 18, and then adults. So anyone who's older than 21 come and they work. They don't get paid, but it's volunteer. And they basically are the people that work with the youth. And it's a really great training opportunity to learn how to do this kind of facilitation, and to, work with kind of these, some at risk, some not at risk youth, learn all the drug-free, lingo, and learn how to kind of understand these different operations. So the Idaho Youth Summit would probably be a really good opportunity to initially learn about that, is generally what I would recommend. But definitely, I think as we are pulling out of this kind of COVID spiral and we're looking to do more I2I student assemblies, our chapters are back up and running in person again. I think we may do 1 or 2 facilitator and advisor trainings, and there might be some opportunities for those things again. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, and then keep us in the loop, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. I'll take down anybody's email that wants it, because I already have yours, Jim. But yeah, and I can definitely keep you all updated as to what we're working on and what opportunities we have, and there should be a lot of good stuff going on coming from us soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. What else do you have for me? I feel like I'm on a roll here. Questions? All right. Want me to keep going?
I think keep going with your
right.
next set.
Perfect. It gets a little less fun now because I talk about drug use, but then it gets interesting. So, oh wait, no, now this is just youth vision. This is just what students learn in our programs. So I forgot I had this slide. Basically, what students will learn, right? What the kind of things we try to teach young people in our programming. transformative life skills, prevention education, positive support systems. So just kind of reiterating all the things that I've said. We want to make sure that what we are teaching people is useful on many levels. When you teach beyond just the prevention education, but also life skills like stress management, what a healthy relationship looks like. You give them positive adult, relationships and, healthy relationships with their friends. Those are all things that are going to give them a good, healthy life baseline so that they're going to have what's necessary for them to, have the really concrete ability to say no to drugs when that opportunity comes up, right? If somebody's like, hey, do you want to come to a party and drink with me? They've got something else going on Friday night because they've got good friends. Or if they're really stressed out because of homework, they've got the skills to handle that stress because we've taught them stress management techniques that they don't feel like they need to go binge drink to handle it. We want to teach them these different layers of things to handle the different kinds of reasons that students are using substances. Because it isn't just, don't do drugs, drugs are bad. That's not the exclusive reasoning behind substance abuse. There are many, many reasons why young people use substances. And we want to make sure that we address as many of them as possible in ways that are as inclusive as possible for young people. So that's the kind of thing that students learn when they're involved with IDFI. Oh. All right, so this is what I was talking about when, we say, oh, well, do we really need to focus on, prevention? Is it necessary in Idaho? My kid's not drinking, I don't know. And, it could be very well true. Your kid could not be drinking, but this is all this information you're about to see is from the Idaho Youth Behavioral Risk Survey in 2019, which is a survey that is distributed annually in Idaho schools. And it is anonymous. It's 100% anonymous. So even though it's still probably not even as high as the actual numbers, because there's still always going to be students that are afraid to actually say what they're doing. This is probably as close of a picture as we're going to get to the behaviors that students are taking part in. And it's, I think, really striking when you see what Idaho students are doing in their off time. So according to the survey, 13.1% of Idaho teens in 2019 had ridden in a car driven by somebody who had been drinking. So that, could have been their parents, it could have been their friends, it could have been a stranger, but that's still way too high of a number for, a teenager having been driven in a car by somebody who had been drinking. Idaho teens who had ever used an electronic cigarette or a vape, almost 50% of Idaho teens have vaped. And remember, this is probably a low number. I think realistically, we are looking at 60 to 65% of Idaho teens have probably vaped before. So that's, getting close to 2/3 of Idaho's teens when you look at an underreported statistic, which is horrifying. I mean, it's just really, it's this vaping epidemic is just, it's getting really bad. And there's things that are ultimately worse than vaping when you look at what's going to immediately kill us, like drinking and driving or, hard drugs, but vaping long-term is really going to kill these kids. And nobody is doing anything about it. And so I think if there's one thing that we can all do right now, it's, if you catch a kid with a vape, throw it in the garbage. When I worked at an ice cream store in college, if a kid came in with a vape and those kids were not 18, we would take it away from them. And there was nothing that those kids could do because they were not supposed to have a vape, and it was not taking their property because they were not 18 and they were not supposed to have one. And just like little things like that, it might seem mean, but it's not mean because they should not be vaping. And, just things like that, calling kids out when they shouldn't be doing it, making sure they know that that stuff is going to kill them. My little sister vapes and she never smoked tobacco in her life. She was never a smoker, but now she's a vapor. And this stuff is so pervasive. That's something I tell everyone. It's getting into our society in ways that we never could have anticipated. So something you can do is just get into anyone that you can possibly get to. Doing, something your church can even do is just doing consequence-free vape product takebacks, is just having a little like secure sealed bin, and anyone who wants to can just drop off their, if they feel like they want to get rid of their vape cartridges and stuff, but they don't know, really what to do, and they want to bring it back, and you give them like a $10 Amazon gift card or something. So anyone, any young person there who's maybe thinking about quitting but doesn't really feel like they have the resources how, I'd be happy to link you up with Project Filter, and they could send you free resources to get people to quit. And then, I just think it's a fantastic opportunity to help people out. I'm on my soapbox about vaping. But this one is just the most astonishing one to me. And then Idaho teens who drank in the past 30 days. And this is just in the past 30 days from when the survey was given. 26.6%. 1 in 4 Idaho teens had drank in the past 30 days from when the survey had been given. Idaho teens who took non-prescribed prescription drugs, 14.2%. So that could be an opioid, that could be a stimulant like Adderall, that could be Xanax or any sort of, downer, anything like that. Idaho teens who were offered, sold, or given an illegal drug on school property, 22.6%. So that is at their schools, they are being given, sold, or offered drugs. Even with the SROs at school, while they're in class, while they're at lunch, whatever that looks like, our youth are being given substances while they're at school. And that's just a really frightening statistic to me. And then the last one, Idaho teens who used marijuana in the past 30 days. Not quite as bad as the drinking one. It's not 26, but it is 16.9%. And that's still a high number. And depending on where you are in Idaho, right, that number could be higher as it gets more accessible with, Western Idaho, you have those dispensaries right there at the border. You probably are going to see higher numbers in Western Idaho than you are in Eastern Idaho. That number is probably going to be lower in Pocatello than it is going to be in Boise, or it is going to be in Coeur d'Alene. So, you're going to have a little bit of a disparity there. But, you look at these numbers, these are low numbers. And, I think when you see the 2020 Youth Behavioral Risk Survey, and you think about how kids have been affected by this pandemic and by missing their prom and missing their graduations and missing their fun events and their time with their friends and all the things they love and they care about, what are they turning to when they have, nothing to do and nothing to care about? They're going to turn to drinking. They're going to turn to vaping. They're going to turn to smoking weed. They are going to do the things that make them feel good when they have no coping mechanisms, because quite frankly, their parents are stressed out too. I mean, who's not stressed out right now? Their parents are stressed out. Their teachers are stressed out. We're all not maybe paying the best attention that we could be right now. And, unless we are able to give teens the best possible resources, teens are going to turn to what they think is going to be the easiest way for them to de-stress. So I truly think that the best way that we can help teens is to check in on them, make sure they're doing all right. Just, pay attention to them, make sure that throughout this pandemic, they are doing okay, give them the resources they need. If they need to feel sad, let them feel sad, make sure that they feel the way that they need to feel, and I always say emphasize instead of empathize, empathize with them, and then just find ways to give them alternative activities, right? Whatever that is. I think that checking with them and seeing what they want to do is really important, because, I'm only 23, I'm almost 24, but I already don't know what kids want to do. I suggest activities and they're like, no, that sounds dumb. My 17-year-old cousin thinks I'm so lame. But, just checking and seeing what they want to do. And they'll tell me oh, I think having a cool remote dance party sounds fun. And I'm like, I never would have thought of a remote dance party, but that does sound fun. That sounds awesome. And so checking with them and having them think of ideas, and then, you know, helping them put that together. Rather than saying, hey, tonight we're going to do this, and this is exactly what you're going to do, because then they're going to be like, oh, that's lame, and they're going to sneak out that night and go do what they want to do. So I'm a firm believer in giving teens actionable opportunities that they can, you know, they get a free choice, but then you are still involved in, and you know that they are making the safe choices because they were given the ability to like have their own thought process. It makes them happy, it makes you happy, everyone's happy, and then you know that they're not out drinking or doing drugs or anything like that. Alternate activities are a really good option. And especially right now in the pandemic, when we're kind of limited in what we can do, it's just a good way to make sure that everyone feels better about what's going on. So also then talking about, why must we go further than just prevention? You know, when we're talking about why IDFI talks about stress reduction and mental health, and, you know, not just talking about drugs, the same survey talks about things that aren't just drugs. It also talks about risk behaviors and, you know, how people are dealing with mental health. Idaho teens in 2019 who felt sad or hopeless for 2 or more weeks in a row so that they stopped doing some usual activities during the past 12 months, 38.9%, that's almost 40% of Idaho's teens felt so sad for more than 2 weeks, which is just such a high number. It's really sad to me that that many teens in Idaho feel that way. And especially looking at what 2020 is probably going to do to that number, is just, it's really, I mean, it's sad to reuse the same word. It's really sad. Idaho teens who seriously considered attempting suicide in 2019, 21.6%. And then Idaho teens who attempted suicide 1 or more times during the past 12 months in 2019, 9.6%. So 1 in 10 Idaho teens did attempt suicide. And this isn't even reporting how many teens were successful in attempting in committing suicide. So, you know, when you look at things like prevention, you have to also look at these factors, because these teens who are going through, you know, severe mental health issues, you know, that translates also into substance abuse issues. You know, what do they need to do to feel better? What do they need to do to feel good? If they're going through something that's making them want to kill themselves or to just lie around and not do anything, you know, they might be thinking about just picking up a bottle of alcohol and drinking to feel better. You know, what can we do to not just remedy what's going on in their brain, but that desire to drink and that desire to smoke weed? There's so many things that we need to address there, to not just fix the desire to drink, but to fix the underlying problem, right? So you have to fix every step of it in order to adequately fix the problem, not just to slap a Band-Aid on it. And then this one is really one that I think IDFI really strives to fix. Idaho teens who report not having at least one teacher or adult at school that they can talk to if there's a problem, 30.6%. This is why I think the chapter programs are so impactful, is because we do have an adult at their school that we want them to go to if there's problems with those chapter advisors. This, you know, and this is a statistic I kind of flip around in the risk survey. It's, you know, it's the opposite. The statistic is actually, these are the kids who report having this at their school, but I look at it the other way in that, you know, only 70% of the students report having this. And so I think it's important to actually look at it the other way and look at the fact that there still are these 30% of these students that don't have this at their schools. And that's really important to acknowledge that. How do we fix this problem? How do we fix the fact that 30% of Idaho students don't have an adult at their school at all? Why is that? What are these schools doing to fix this problem? Are they doing anything at all? How can we fix the problem as, you know, external individuals? Or how can we create, you know, external groups that would give teens, you know, positive adult role models in their lives? And then Idaho teens who were bullied on school property in the last 12 months, 21.2%. So all of these are real factors that contribute to substance abuse problems for teens. When teens are facing things like this, they don't have adults to go to when they're being bullied at school. They're likely to go use substances when they're done with school and they're stressed. If their parents are working all day and they don't have anyone to go to at home, if they, feel like they don't want to go do their usual activities, if they're thinking about harming themselves, it's all just, it all compiles on itself, and it's so hurtful and damaging. And we want to make sure that we're really thinking about the full picture here. It's not just about drugs. It's not just about substances. We want to be thinking about these teens as the people that they are and the factors that are, that are in their lives. And if we don't think about that whole person that is being affected, we'll never really fully address what's going into substance abuse with young people. So these are just things to think about. What we can do beyond just substance abuse is, how can we help teens who are considering suicide? How can we help teens who are depressed? How can we help teens who don't feel like they have adults to go to? We can be adults for teens to go to. We can be positive adult role models. We can stop bullying when we're seeing it happen. We might not be on school properties a lot, but when we are, let's stop that when we see it happen. Let's go to school administrations and lobby and say, what are you doing to stop this from happening adequately? What can you do to stop it from happening? And there's things that we as adults can do to make that happen, and we have to be there to do it. And those are just small, actionable items that we can do to make those differences in these statistics. So just going back into my scare tactics don't work thing, scare tactics don't work. They really don't. Like I said, we would know by now if scare tactics worked, because nobody would have ever, smoked marijuana again, yet like 30 some states have legalized marijuana across the US. And, people are still doing cocaine and people are still making meth. And, we know that scare tactics don't work. So you just have to recognize that there are underlying factors. There's social emotional learning, influence from peers. All of these contribute to increasing substance use among teens. But by both educating our youth in just a really frank and upfront way, not by scaring them, but by just giving them the facts in a way that shows that we respect them enough to tell them exactly what's going on with drugs. And by mitigating all of these other factors, we can create a very well-rounded primary prevention system that tackles substance abuse at the source, while also creating management systems for stress, school, work, social situations, and anything else that might pop up in teens' lives. So I know what I went over now is a little heavier, but it's really important information when you're thinking about young people using substances. And it's not something a lot of people talk about, right? And it's, when you don't think about it, it doesn't get fixed. But before I go into the next steps, does anyone have any questions? Oh, Jim, I think you're muted.
Vic and Connie, I thought I was able to hear you. Do you have any questions?
No, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Well, praise the Lord for small favors.
Well, I think it's a impressive program.
Do you have any questions from you though?
Not yet.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'm glad we got you guys in though. This is great.
Yeah, we've been here ever since you started.
Oh, perfect. All right. Well, fantastic. And I'm glad that we're getting you guys this information, because it really is just so important for everyone to know, this is what's going on with young people in Idaho. And there's no mincing words about it. This is what they're doing. These are the facts straight from the sources you're going to get. Because if you walk up to a kid and you ask them to tell you, they're going to lie to your face. So this survey is just about the only way for us to know how kids are using substances. So it's good information to have. And if anyone's curious about this, I'd be happy to send the link to the survey. There's a lot more information than just the substance abuse issues. There's stuff like how grades correlate with these behaviors. There's some very interesting information in the survey. So,
Yeah.
sorry, the text on this is kind of small, but what can we do to support youth prevention, right? So I'll walk through all of this, and I can send out this PowerPoint at the end of this too. So we can educate ourselves, and you guys have already done that by inviting me here today. So thank you so much. You've taken, honestly, the most important step by just being willing to think about, what you can do for young people, and making sure that you're, thinking about the young people in your community and in your church and in your homes. And it's so important. But parents and grandparents and everyone, making your homes a supportive and judgment-free zone. So I think offering positive reinforcement options before youth are using substances to prevent them from even starting. So, thinking about, hey, like, let's go join. I mean, I always use Idify as the example because I work for Idify and that's what I'm familiar with, but any similar entity. So a youth group would be a great example too. Like, hey, let's go hang out and make these great friends in youth group and go do fun youth group activities. And, if you go do this fun youth group thing, instead of going and doing the party, like, just affiliating fun, positive things with Idify and youth group instead of drinking and partying, right? It's a really good way. And I mean, quite frankly, it's what I did as a kid. And a lot of people never believe me when I say this. I did not have a sip of alcohol until I was 19 years old. And it is a pretty astounding fact, considering I'm from a Wisconsin, very, very alcoholic family. And it was like my parents were not even in like a come, party and drink way, but they were like, have a sip of beer, just try this beer with your dad type way. And I was like, no, I don't want it. I don't want to drink. I don't drink. I was very dedicated to not having alcohol. So it was very funny. But, those positive reinforcement options are very important. And I think that this group in particular, you have a really positive church environment that I think will be really good. And I was in a youth group as a kid too. So I had a youth group to go to. I had Idify. I had some really great places. And I think that offering those to kids are a great start. And, so if your kid's already in Idify, if your kid's already going to a youth group, if your kid's already going to sports or just something that, they know they're going to go to that instead of going to a party, that's great. You're going to have really good success. It's when kids are bored and they're like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do with my time, that, they're maybe going to be more likely to go to a party or, if they don't have those positive relationships or positive reinforcement, positive connections with other people, that they end up going and, making those negative decisions, right? So that's where groups like Idify and youth groups and churches, I think, can be super impactful and super important. And then I think one thing that's always been really important is, if you catch your kid using substances, right? So if you catch your kid drunk, if you catch your kid, with a substance, break down the root cause of why they're using that and solve for the root cause, not just punish them. And I'm not here to tell you how to punish a kid. Do what you want to do there. But don't just punish them, send them to their room. But, think about like, hey, why is Jack drinking tonight? Did he have a fight with his girlfriend? How do we deal with that? Why did he run out and drink instead of going and hanging out with his friends? What's going on here? And try to help navigate that situation instead of just running and, punishing. And because that'll kind of break down your relationship with your kid. If you just send him to his room, punish him, don't, do anything to kind of help fight the root cause. And I think it's really important to help figure out why your kid's drinking, why your kid's using a substance, right? That's a really critical thing as a parent or a guardian or any kind of adult figure, is to figure out that underlying reason. And, if you can figure out the underlying reason, you can often help to stop substance use right then and there. It's not always a perfect system, but if you're just going to punish, it's just going to reinforce the same system of now I just got to be sneakier and not get caught next time. It's never going to fix it. I can promise you it'll never fix the problem. And so as parents, we can make our home a supportive and judgment-free zone. And, you know, when you do catch your kid drinking or smoking or anything, you know, punish them if you want to, but you got to make sure that you're also trying to figure out why what is happening and how you can be supportive and help solve that problem. As teachers and school officials, you know, offering meaningful programming opportunities at your schools for kids to participate in judgment-free. So if that's IDFI chapters, if that's Red Ribbon Week, you know, stuff like that, making sure that there's drug-free opportunities for kids to participate in. Because when kids have that opportunity, there's kids that want to be drug-free at the schools. I was one of those kids. Those kids exist. And if those kids don't get that opportunity, they're just going to kind of suffer in silence until they graduate, and they're going to run out of there, you know? And so making sure that those opportunities are there. And then I really do believe in making drug-free choices the cool choice, with incentives like, you know, school trips for students that participate in the drug-free activities, giving away merch, you know, if there's like a pizza day for kids who are in the drug-free club, whatever that looks like. Because when IDFI was able to do stuff and, you know, IDFI chapters would fundraise and go on ski trips to, you know, the Wood River chapter would do a Utah jazz trip because they had some money. There's some money in Sun Valley, you know, and they would fundraise and they would get to go to a Utah jazz game, and they became like the coolest kids in the Wood River High School were the IDFI chapter kids. And you'd never think that the drug-free kids would be the coolest kids in school. But when they're the kids going on the ski trips and going to the Utah jazz games, you never believe it. They become the cool kids. And if you make that the social norm at your school, that's how you do it. You know, if partying is replaced by being drug-free, it happens. So schools and teachers, they have the opportunity to make that happen by, you know, making that be where you put your opportunities and your incentives, right? So it's just a matter of kind of changing priorities sometimes. And it just depends on like where the funding is. Sometimes that's not always the opportunity that they have, but, you know, just allowing students to say, I want to start this club and we want to fundraise is what you have to do. And then also offering consequence-free drug take-back days. You know, and the consequence-free is what's really important, because there are students who will get rid of their drugs if there's a consequence-free opportunity to do so. You know, their cigarettes or their vapes or their, you know, maybe if somebody's like dropping off some meth, you might want to follow up on that, right? But I don't think anyone's really going to be doing that. It'll be, you know, something like maybe somebody's going to drop off a 6-pack of beer that they don't want, or their cigarettes, you know, just little things. And then like a small little $5 gift card or something in return. Those can be really good for getting stuff out of communities. And then for doctors, something that we really need to change is we need to not have doctors prescribing highly addictive medications to teens without follow-ups, without serious follow-ups on that, because they'll just, you know, prescribe oxycodone and never talk to them again. And, you know, teens sell that stuff. They get addicted to that stuff. It's, you know, a really high risk behavior. And then in checkups and physicals, flag and follow up on risky behavior in future appointments. So that's something that as adults too, we can really encourage with teens that we know, is making sure that if we know that a teen is going on a highly addictive medication, that we're following up on that with them. And then peers, invite friends to fun and drug-free events. If we know there's this super cool IDFI event going on, hey, you should come with me. It's going to be a really cool dance battle or whatever. Like, we should all go and have a good time. Or encourage drug-free behavior by making it the norm in your friend group. Social norms are really how everything gets started, you know, and if that's like what you have the opportunity to do, it can be really impactful. So that's what we can all do to encourage prevention efforts. It can sometimes be just the smallest things that individuals, you don't have to have a lot of money, you don't have to have a lot of time. Sometimes it can just be the small conversations, the small things that can make the biggest differences. So, and we as IDFI always need positive and passionate adult role models for events and school advisors. And that could be you guys if you're ever interested. Like I said, I'll send you updates. and passionate youth who want to make a difference in Idaho and who are committed to a substance-free lifestyle or who want to be. We take students where they're at. So if that's a student who has used drugs in the past, doesn't anymore, if that's a student who is using drugs but wants to stop, like I said, we don't offer rehabilitative services, but if they are stopping and want to be a part of IDFI, we'll take them. I can't necessarily help them with the nitty gritty of things, but they are always welcome in IDFI. And if that's a student that's never ever used drugs, they are welcome with us. And then prevention partners from other organizations. And, you know, you guys are a church, there's content that you can bring to us with, you know, youth groups and, you know, there's always stuff that we can use from other local organizations in the area. So there's always stuff that we can do with our local community partners. So this is, you know, there's always something that we can do to partner with people. And also, fun fact, over here in the striped sweater, this is me when I was 17. This is one of my favorite pictures of me with my youth advisory board, which is why I throw it in here at the end. So yeah, this is our little youth advisory board when we were putting together a project for IDFI. So any questions?
I don't have a question, but I would like to have the link to the survey.
Yes, I can definitely, I'll write that on a sticky note. I can send that out to everyone.
You know, I was thinking, can you hear me?
Yes. I can.
Yes.
As a church, we might look into possibly sponsoring Emily to go to one of the training sessions or whatever you called it, to become really aware of all that you discussed just now. That I think that would be excellent.
Emily is our youth director then.
Oh, fantastic.
And we were hoping that, at least I was hoping that she would be on this morning. She's been a lot of different things happening, so she wasn't able to make it. But
I understand that. It can be
We
a
have the
crazy time.
recording.
but we got the recording, and then you were saying, you know, if other resources or even, you know, let me know and I can send out, or let Heather know. I can give you some other email addresses then. That'd be
Yeah,
good
that'd be great.
connection.
Can you tell us what schools in Coeur d'Alene have ID5 chapters?
Yes, that would be, here, let me pull up I have it on paper. I have to actually look. It's been a while since let's see. We have,
Like these.
the chapters are all kind of all over the place right now, if I'm being honest, because some schools were, so Bonner's Ferry is one of them, which I know isn't really in Coeur d'Alene. I just kind of go in the area. Kootenai Junior and Senior. And then Lakeland in Rathdrum, Priest River, St. Mary's and St. Mary's. Let's see. And then that's not it. For sure there are. But yeah, because some schools stopped all club activity when COVID hit. So no clubs have been able to operate since COVID started. And so some of our chapters have been totally inactive since, you know, the beginning of COVID. Some clubs have, you know, been active. Some clubs have been allowed to be, but the students have just been not interested because they've been, you know, all burnt out. It's been a very interesting time for the chapter program. here we go. So we have. All right, they're all mixed up. They're not in order of region right now. They're in alphabetical order.
Maybe if you could just email those to Jim.
Yes, that might be a little more convenient.
When it's more convenient for you.
Yes, I would be happy to do that. That might make a little more sense. Because I've got this nice big stack of paper. One's all around the state. So.
Okay, yeah, we that would take another hour.
Oh yeah. But yes, we do have quite a few different schools, especially in the area, that are pretty involved. And I know that Priest River is one of the best ones in terms of their involvement, and Lakeland as well. They've been very, very heavily involved for the past few years, even throughout COVID.
Yeah.
So.
Then I'm in the North Coeur d'Alene Kiwanis Club, and so we have key clubs and builder clubs and action clubs, but our key clubs are for our high schools, and so it just all of a sudden it just seemed like a good partnership with IDA.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you guys reaching out and having me speak today. This has just been the most fun. I love getting to talk to different groups, and it doesn't come up very often. Usually I'm just asking like health districts for money, which isn't very exciting.
So we sure appreciate you too.
Yes.
And all you're doing. It is so important.
What do you regard as one of the most helpful things that could be achieved through the Idaho legislature?
I think that a reviewing the way that our government looks at prevention, both for youth and for adults, right? The way that currently I think things are looked at is at a very rehabilitative level, almost exclusively. The almost one of the best ways to evaluate it is through the Millennium Fund grant, which is a grant that back when there was the big tobacco lawsuit in the early 2000s, all of the states got a huge amount of money from it. And Idaho chose to invest its money. And so we basically have this constantly re-upping dividend of funds because it's just reinvesting itself, which is really cool. So there's a special legislative committee that meets to disperse those funds every year to prevention organizations, except it's turned from prevention organizations to almost exclusively rehabilitation centers really often, is what I've noticed. The past few years, IDA used to get money. I mean, and this is just from IDA's experience, but it's not just been IDA. The Idaho Meth Project used to get money from it. And IDA and the Idaho Meth Project both have stopped getting money from it in recent years, and as of other organizations. It's, I think, stopped going to a lot of important entities. And just the way that they pass laws around prevention and pass laws around just kind of drug use, it's really focused on rehabilitation rather than, rehabilitation is important, and I don't want to come across as saying that it's not, but you don't need rehabilitation to nearly such an extent if you invest in prevention. Because if people are educated and if people are, empowered, then you won't have such a high percentage of people needing rehabilitative services. And so I think that if we can restructure the way that the Idaho legislature views prevention, then hopefully if we can get them to invest, and not exclusively IDA, right? I don't want it to come across as I'm like, oh, give IDA money, but just any preventive entity in the state of Idaho. There's so many important groups that do so much work for drug prevention, substance prevention. Marco Erickson, he's the Idaho legislator who's on our board. He does fantastic work for prevention. And there's so many other nonprofits and so many individuals who are doing such incredible work. And I think that between, the many groups that do that work, investing in that network of primary prevention across the state, you could probably lower the need for rehabilitative services pretty substantially. But, instead I feel that the legislature is choosing to increase the rehabilitative burden and just investing in rehabilitative services over and over again, which just isn't really looking at the science of prevention needs. That's my opinion. I would say that the science backs that up, but it's just rehabilitation works too, is the thing. But then people do end up going back into rehabilitative services over and over and over again. So it's a double-edged sword. I do think that's probably one of the most impactful things that they could do. And also passing positive legislation for, prevention. I think there's legislation that maybe goes too far. I think that one bill that didn't end up getting passed would have put maybe undue burdens on citizens' rights in, not being able to do citizens ballot initiatives. So the bill that would have prevented citizens from ever being able to pass ballot initiatives was the main criticism of it. It would have prevented any changes to legalizing. And I want to make it very clear, I'm not pro legalizing like medical marijuana. But the main criticism was that the bill that didn't pass in the legislature would have made it impossible to have a citizen ballot initiative for legalizing medical marijuana. And that it gets into some really dicey, like freedoms stuff, of the ability for Idahoans to have the legal right, which they do, to put that ballot initiative on the Idaho, voters ballot. But I do think that you can pass a law, reasonable laws, to make those kinds of restrictions that aren't messing with Idaho's legal voter rights as well. So there's passing good laws versus like passing overly restrictive ones that don't mess with the freedoms of Idahoans, as well as, kind of the balance that the Idaho legislature needs to take as well. So that's what I personally think. But I think it's just a matter of they need to kind of find the middle ground. And that's probably why that bill didn't pass, is my guess as well. There's just not enough, there wasn't enough balance, and there wasn't enough support for it, maybe. Yeah, what other questions?
It's up to you.
Oh, it was interesting. I thought maybe, no, I guess I do have it right. Oh, no, I'm fine. I thought your email was different than what I had down, but it's exactly the same. That's what you have on the screen. So, sorry.
And then, yeah, oh no, you're okay. And Jim has my personal cell phone number as well.
Yes.
Which, yeah, you're welcome to use. It's easier to get a hold of me with than the Idafy phone. The Idafy phone has really bad reception. If I'm being honest, it's a little track phone, like a cell phone. So it's just not the best reception, I think. But so you're welcome to contact me for future stuff on my cell phone, Jim, if you would ever like to.
Okay, I did this morning.
Yeah. So feel free to ever reach out if you need to on that as well.
Okay.
And thank you very much.
And if there isn't any more questions, is there any questions? Going once, going twice, thrice, that takes care of three of us then. Then we just really appreciate the time and the information and the ways that we can follow up with you, and then having this recorded, that's going to really help to get out the information. And we just thank you for your time this morning. And this is excellent then. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. And I will send out this PowerPoint for you all to have. I will send out a link to the Youth Behavioral Risk Survey. So if you would like to check out kind of the answers that Idaho youth have there, you can see what's going on. And yeah, if you think of anything else you'd like me to send, just let me know. You know how to get a hold of me.
Okay, okay.
Great work you're
Yeah.
doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I'll keep you updated with the stuff that we have going on. If any of you think of anything that you would like Idify to do with your church or with your youth group or anything, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to have that conversation.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're a delight.
You guys are all too. This was fantastic. The perfect way to start my weekend.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you have a good rest of the weekend then. Okay,
Thank you. You too.
okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Heather. That was good to get it recorded then.
Yes, I will stop recording now. Stop. Okay.